My name is Dr. Adora Obi Nweze. I was born in Miami, and it was what we call, some of us still call, Overtown, in a hospital that was called Christian Hospital. My mother finished from Florida A&M University, and she was a teacher. And then she was also working on, she was a real bookworm. So she was working on more and more degrees, and she did all of that study. And went into another field of education, and special ed is what she went into. And as a result of her doing that, then I grew up, and I can tell you, it is very weird how I ended up in special education too. And now my oldest son teaches in special education. So that's one of those things that just seems to turn out that way, but it works. When I was the age of 11 years old, my mother sent me to an all-girls boarding school, all black, but the teachers were white and a few blacks. I went to Bennett College for a year, met a young man from A&T, got married, and moved to North Carolina and enrolled in a school called Fayetteville State Teachers College at that time. I went with my husband to Washington, D.C. Now that's where I taught. It was my first time teaching, and I taught there for 2 years. And then when I came to Miami, I taught for another 8 years, which meant it was about 10 years there. And after the 10 years, I started to get promotions. And believe it or not, but one of them put me right here at Homestead. I was over Title I program. I was number 2 person in the Title I program. And from Title I moved into alternative education, where I was over teen parent programs and juvenile justice. Now, simultaneous to that, I got involved with the NAACP. And I got involved about 1979. I worked for that one branch when it was consolidated for 11 years. And then I was promoted to become the president of the Florida State Conference. And the same year that I came to the Florida State Conference as president, I also was recommended to be on the National Board of Directors. When I started in the 79 area during that year, one of the things that was happening was that people from Haiti were dying trying to get over here. And many of them didn't make it. Some did, but not the number that should have been making it. So one of the things that I found myself in the middle of, and would do it again if I had to, helping to bury those who were dying and fighting for those who were coming here, trying to come here. Because one of the big fights that we had was that they would not accept Haitian blood for blood transfusions. And we went all the way to the Supreme Court on that one. We had to. But that was an ugly fight, nasty fight. Simultaneous to that, by 1980, we were into the McDuffie riots. That was a case of a young man named Arthur McDuffie, who was killed on a motorcycle by law enforcement. And it just set us off because we'd been having other killings, other abuses by law enforcement. And we hadn't really addressed it. And people had just had enough. So they took to the street. Needless to say, we started on the work with law enforcement in our community, in the black community. I tell you the truth, I thought I had myself together, but I found out I ain't know nothing until that boycott came. And when the commissioners in the city of Miami wouldn't let Mandela come up in here, and we know the names of the people who didn't allow it, and the boycott had to be started, we had 2 people, H.C. Smith and Marilyn Hollyfield, both black lawyers, that started the boycott, and I was one of the people that they put in their circle, so I was in the direct center of every moment of it. We learned a lot from the boycott, a lot of what we didn't know. And we learned that if we don't stay on this field, it's going to go back to where it was before the boycott happened. Of course, we have to include the hurricane that came and destroyed the South. And it took all of us in the city and the state and this country to try to make a difference, to put this whole area back up. Well, the whole reconstruction effort that I focused on were people who were in their private homes and trying to rebuild it, particularly those persons with children, and they needed, really, really extra help. I did raising of quite a bit of money. I did a lot of begging. I did a lot of walking up and down the streets, talking to people, making sure that their list got filled, that they needed. Some of the basic things in life was what was on my list. I begged for money from people from all over the country in the NAACPers. They had to all shake their pockets loose to send us money down here. And so I think we did a pretty good job of that. What does the future look like? The next 5 years, the next 10 years? Well, let me tell you one of the things that I want to be sure to bring up, and this is about as good a time as any for it. I wish I could get, and we're trying, to get our people to understand environmental justice. Because what we've got on our way here in Florida in the next 10 years or so, we're going to be going underwater. The state's going to go underwater, this entire state. Nobody believes that. For those of us who work with environmental justice, and that's one of the areas that I do work in and we work in the NAACP, because we believe it and we know that it's real. Florida is in more trouble than any place you hear in terms of what will happen in the next 10 years or so. The research is there. We aren't reading it. We aren't talking about it. We don't bring it to our people to understand. What do we do together? Everybody is so isolated. Even among blacks, we know that Haitians live in these areas, Jamaicans live in these areas. It's just extremely isolated, and it's so unfortunate. And there are blacks that we don't hardly see. We know that they're there, but we don't go to church with them. If our children go to school with them, we hurry up and get out of school and run home. So there's not a lot of interacting among our children and among adults as well. They don't see it. So it can be all right if we would allow it to be. The future in terms of what I would like to paint would be a community that understood itself, in that the people in it would understand you can't live here in isolation. That it is not going to be possible for us to survive, live that is, if we don't start working together. If you're going to be a fighter for our people, then that's not something you leave once you start it. You can't. So I never will until I'm gone.